Some silver slimes were roaming around happily, but since they are pretty rare monsters, everyone wants a piece of them. But before anyone else can get to them, one lucky bastard dashes forward, and critical hits all of them. A system notification appears confirming that the lucky bastard Takahashi Yukido has obtained several S-rank items. Yukido observes his valuable loot while the onlookers react in shock, pointing out how rare the drops are. As Yukido walks away, the adventurer calls him one lucky guy, clearly envious of his incredible fortune. Yukido himself acknowledges how unbelievable it is that every single item he obtained is of the highest rank. It almost feels too good to be true. As he stares at the glowing interface, he internally reflects that it seems like a reward for all the struggles he faced in his previous life. Back then things were pretty tragic as an 85-year-old elderly bronze-rank adventurer. We see him hunched over in exhaustion, clad in a tattered red cloak at the dungeon labeled Tokyo Dungeon First Floor. The elderly Yukido is surrounded by numerous adventurers. A muscular adventurer raises his phone showing footage of approaching creatures and loudly announces that the monsters have arrived. Bats swarm, flames rage, it's total chaos. Someone warns that it's no longer safe outside, so an adventurer shouts that they must move deeper inside the dungeon. Another argues it's pointless as more monsters are coming from below. A younger adventurer sees the elderly Yukido still standing and urges him to run, saying now isn't the time to be hunting slimes. Yukido doesn't respond. The younger man reaches out, but Yukido swats his hand away, and without hesitation Yukido walks toward a group of slimes. The younger man stares, still shouting after him in confusion, but people whisper that there's something wrong with the old man. They say to leave him, calling him a useless old fart whose stats never goes up. Another young adventurer angrily pushes past him, shoving the old man aside. Yukido falls but does not break. He reflects that decades have passed since the founding of adventurers. The system follows a familiar structure even though growth varies for each person. Defeating monsters increases levels. Leveling up boosts stats, allowing some to gain magic while others get skills. This is normal, but Yukido's case is different as his stats are abysmal. He wonders why only he is like this as he remembers his past struggles where every time he tried to do his best, he trained relentlessly, pushing himself beyond limits, hunting weak monsters endlessly. He climbed to level 98 through sheer effort. The system limit is level 99, so just one more remains. He tells himself everything will be worth it once he reaches the top as he lunges at a slime. He yells that his stats are just slow to bloom, believing the final level will change everything. While struggling against the slime, he grits his teeth, screaming that it has to be true. Once he wins, a notification appears telling him that he has reached level 99. His breath is shaky as he whispers finally. His hands tremble, staring at the glowing screen. He believes this is it, the moment everything changes as tears stream down his face. He begs the system to reward him for all his hardships with a desperate voice. A final notification appears showing that his strength has increased by 1. Seeing this, he falls to his knees as the truth sets in, causing rage to overtake him. He screams at the system, asking if it was all for nothing. Despair has crushed him so much that even his voice cracks as he demands an answer. But around him there are just glowing red, hungry eyes of the monsters who are waiting for him to succumb. His body grows heavy as his limbs refuse to move. He no longer has any hope. That whole life was just truly horrible. Everyone looked down on him. He couldn't save his mother, who had always treasured him. He even ended up crushing his one and only little sister's happiness. So he was glad in a way for that crappy shit to be over. But then, the system screen flashes red with an emergency notification. A fatal error has occurred with Takahashi Yukido's status system. An emergency repair patch is deployed, forcefully initiating a rollback on his life. As the correction takes effect, a hidden system layer is unlocked, revealing previously inaccessible parameters. In an unprecedented move, the system grants him an enormous compensation for its failure as an apology for the errors that plagued his existence. Yukido's consciousness stirs, his surroundings dissolve from darkness into a bright, unfamiliar space. Takahashi Yukido looks around in confusion as he processes what just happened. The receptionist smiles at him warmly as she informs him that from this moment onward he is an adventurer. His mind races, trying to make sense of the situation, so he hesitantly asks if there is something wrong, but the receptionist reassures him that everything is in order. Flustered, he quickly denies any issue and thanks her before stepping away. He finds a quiet corner and pulls out his phone. The date displayed on the screen is March 15th. This was the exact day he had first registered as an adventurer in his previous life. He remembers seeing status bonuses right before he died and wonders what happened. As he calls out for his status screen, it appears exactly as it was when he first started, but but this time to his surprise he can actually scroll down. Curiosity gets the best of him and he swipes downward to see something shocking. His other stats are unchanged, but his luck stat is maxed out at 99.99. This is freaking insanity. Luck had always been an invisible, hidden parameter, and for someone who endured 70 years of misfortune, this newfound advantage seems surreal. Determined to confirm whether this luck truly impacts his life, he decides to go slime hunting. He enters the Tokyo dungeon where the sight of blue slimes hopping in the grass brings him a strange sense of comfort. Just as he is about to begin his hunt, his keen eyes catch an anomaly. A silver slime, an ultra-rare monster, one that he had only ever encountered once in his previous life, only to watch it escape in an instant. Determined not to let it slip away again, he readies his weapon. He knows that this monster yields an enormous amount of experience points, but it is notoriously famous for its quick escapes. He needs just one more step to reach the slime with his attack. But suddenly an arrow shoots into the ground near him. A voice from the distance hurriedly apologizes, claiming that it was a misfire. But his worst fears come true as he watches the silver slime tremble in panic. Now it looks like his once-in-a-lifetime opportunity might slip away yet again. But the next moment the slime suddenly turns around and launches an attack. Shocked that the slime is being aggressive instead of escaping, seeing an opening, Yukido strikes at it with all his might. His weapon pierces directly into the core of the silver slime. As the slime bursts apart, he feels the surge of experience rushing through him, instantly leveling up multiple times. However, his victory comes at a cost. His weapon has also shattered upon impact. He acknowledges the toughness of the silver slime and makes a mental note to acquire a better weapon. But before he can lament his loss, a radiant light shines from where the slime once stood. He watches in awe as an item materializes before him. Disbelief washes over him as he realizes what it is: an S-rank drop, and it's a weapon. Picking it up, he marvels at the craftsmanship of the great sword of the silver slime. Checking its details, it boasts high attack power, but has a 30% chance of missing, a trait inherited from the silver slime's evasive nature. Holding the weapon in his hands, he grins, thinking to himself that this is an incredible start. Encouraged by this unexpected fortune, he prepares to continue hunting. However, before he can move forward, he is once again caught off guard for more silver slimes appear before him. Stunned, he wonders if he is dreaming, as encountering even one of these monsters in his past life was nearly impossible. Yet, before he can process his luck, the slimes suddenly charge at him in unison. Realizing he has no choice but to fight, he braces himself, acknowledging that hitting all of them at once will be a challenge, especially with a weapon that has a high chance of missing. But despite the odds, he refuses to back down. After successfully defeating the 4 silver slimes, he reflects on his triumph and remarks that he somehow managed to take them all down. The glowing loot from the fallen slimes catches his eye as he examines the rewards with a satisfied expression. He continues hunting for another hour, fully immersed in his newfound success. In a small comedic moment, he finds himself in an almost surreal situation, exclaiming as yet another silver slime appears before him. The sheer number of encounters leaves him bewildered but excited. After collecting rare drops from each silver slime he realizes that his bag is already full. He acknowledges that at this point he has no choice but to believe in his absurdly high luck. Standing on a hill during sunset, he raises his arms and joyfully exclaims that his luck is the real deal. Laying down in the golden field, he takes a deep breath and lets the reality of his new life sink in. He stares at the sky, contemplating the power he now possesses. As the sun sets, he clenches his fist with determination, believing that, with this power, he can surely become someone this time. Yukido, feeling a renewed sense of purpose, affirms that he will make his family happy. He recalls his sick mother, who he wants to support, and his sister, whom he envisions as a bride, hoping for her happiness as well. As he lies in the grass, basking in the warm glow of the setting sun, he suddenly realizes something crucial. Does he even have a home to return to? He abruptly sits up, questioning whether his past life circumstances still exist. The weight of his 70 years of solitude crashes down on him, making him wonder what has changed. With a longing gaze, he grips his sword and admits to himself that he wants to go home. Takahashi Yukido rushes through the streets with determination. He thinks to himself that he wants to meet his family right now. His heart pounds as he sprints towards his home, desperate to confirm if they are really there. As he arrives in front of an old apartment complex, he stops for a moment, catching his breath. Climbing up the stairs, he tries to remember which room belonged to his family. He struggles to recall, but then suddenly his eyes land on a door with the name Takahashi on it. The sight sparks his memory and he exclaims, "Oh yeah, room number 203. Reaching out his hand, he hesitates for for a brief moment before gripping the doorknob. Takahashi Yukido stands outside the door taking a deep breath to calm himself, wondering why he feels so nervous. Determined, he finally steels himself and reaches for the doorknob as the door creaks open from the inside. A soft voice says, "Ah," and as the door fully opens, Yukido sees his younger sister standing there with a bright smile. She looks at him with sparkling eyes and cheerfully says, "Welcome back, big brother." He rushes forward and embraces her tightly, calling her name with overwhelming emotion. Nozomi flinches in surprise and asks what he is doing all of a sudden, wondering if it is some kind of hidden camera prank. She laughs nervously while struggling slightly in his grip, confused by his sudden outburst. Despite her protests, Yukido refuses to let go. He tells himself that this time he will not allow anyone to take away what is precious to him. Holding her even tighter, he feels determined to protect his family with everything he has in this second chance at life. Takahashi Yukido tells Nozomi everything that had happened up until now. As he speaks, Nozomi is amazed and excitedly asks if they can use his newfound luck to save their mother. Yukido reassures her, saying that of course they can, as all it takes is a bit of effort. The next day, Yukido exchanges the rare items he had obtained from his recent encounters, receiving a significant amount of money in return. With that money, he prepares to make an important purchase at an auction. Yukido successfully wins the auction by bidding 10 million and secures the highest grade status ailment recovery potion. He then goes to the hospital where his family name, Takahashi Yukido, is on the door of a hospital room. Knocking on the door, he hears a voice inviting them in. As Yukido and Nozomi step inside, he greets their mother warmly, telling her that they came to visit. Their mother, appearing weak but smiling, asks how they have been. Yukido responds with a gentle smile, telling her that he should be the one saying that line, implying his concern for her well-being. Nozomi excitedly presents a souvenir to their mother while smiling brightly. Their mother expresses her gratitude but gently advises them not to do this again, suggesting that they should use their money for themselves instead. Yukido reassures her that she no longer has to worry about money. Nozomi enthusiastically adds that they have another present for her. Their mother, looking curious, asks what it is. Yukido, holding a glowing bottle, acknowledges that it's sudden but tells her that he wants her to drink it. Yukido's mother is surprised by the expensive potion he has brought her. Nozomi eagerly explains that Yukido earned money from the dungeon and bought it specifically for her. His mother, still in disbelief, questions him, reminding him that he had only recently become an adventurer. She asks if he could really have earned enough to afford such a costly item. Yukido, looking away slightly, responds humbly that he was just lucky. Without hesitation, he hands her the potion and gently urges her to drink it. His mother takes the bottle, opens it, and begins drinking. As she swallows, a glow begins to surround her body. Feeling the sudden change, she reacts with surprise as the glow intensifies. Yukido and Nozomi anxiously look at their mother, watching closely for any changes. Yukido asks how she is feeling, his eyes filled with hope. Their mother, surprised, exclaims that she suddenly feels very light and notices that breathing has become much easier. A joyful expression spreads across her face as she realizes the potion is working. Yukido sighs in relief and smiles, expressing his happiness that it worked. Nozomi, filled with excitement, celebrates by giving Yukido a high five. She praises him, enthusiastically calling him the best big brother. Their mother, now relaxed, comments that the potion does not taste good at all. In a playful manner, Yukido smirks and hands her a small treat, telling her to cleanse her palate with it. Yukido reflects that his mother's symptoms have eased and the progression of her illness has stopped. The doctor seems surprised and pleased with her recovery. After some rehabilitation, Yukido's mother begins walking again with the help of a nurse, regaining her strength. She eventually receives permission for home care, allowing her to leave the hospital and return home. As she walks with Yukido and Nozomi under the bright sky, she expresses how it feels like a dream to be able to live together again as a family. Nozomi, filled with joy, insists that it is not a dream but reality. Later, their mother stands in the kitchen washing dishes, smiling, as she remarks that nothing can be as relaxing as their home. Nozomi expresses her relief and happiness that their mother has gotten better. However, Yukido responds by saying that although it's good news, it's still not enough. Nozomi looks confused and asks why. Yukido explains that the potion he gave their mother is only a temporary measure, it cannot fully cure the illness. Nozomi, now worried, asks what they should do next. Yukido stands up and tells her that they need an even more powerful legendary L-rank item, something like an elixir, a legendary potion known for its miraculous healing properties. Nozomi tells Yuck Ito that she saw the information on TV about the elixir, mentioning that the world's top adventurers were the ones who found it. Yuck Ito explains that the elixir has shocking effects capable of even curing someone on the brink of death. The elixir only appears on floors lower than 50 in the dungeon, and it is impossible to buy. Nozomi asks Yuck Ito if it is a unique item, to which he confirms that it is. Unique items are special items that can only be used by the one who obtains them, emphasizing that such glory can only be achieved by defeating a powerful being. Nozomi then questions if the fact that it cannot be bought with money means they have to obtain it themselves. Yuck Ito answers without hesitation, confirming that they indeed have to get it on their own. As Nozomi washes dishes alongside her mother and brother, she turns and asks Yuck Ito if he can descend deeper than the 50th floor of the dungeon. Yuck Ito casually flips a fork and responds that it is normally impossible, adding that if he tried, he would die a dog's death. Nozomi reacts with shock, exclaiming in disbelief and questioning if that means it is truly impossible. Yuck Ito smirks and clarifies that he only said, normally. He then reflects on his own abilities, acknowledging that the power given to him is not just luck. He also recalls that he has the knowledge from his past life, which gives him a unique advantage. Yuck Ito recalls that the elixir can appear on the upper floors, but he knows of a rare exception. The 20th floor boss monster, the ancient golem, is one such source. This powerful entity has a unique drop, the elixir, which can cure any illness, but the probability of obtaining it is extremely low. Since it's a rare drop from a rare boss monster, this makes sense. Yuck Ito reflects on his past life, remembering that this was such an extraordinary event that he had only ever heard about it once. Yuck Ito thinks to himself that, with the luck he has right now, he should be able to obtain the elixir. Nozomi notices his scheming expression and points it out. Yuck Ito asks if he really made such an expression while holding a jug of tea. Nozomi shrugs it off and says that since it is him, he can do anything. Yuck Ito confidently responds that it is a given while pouring tea into 3 glasses. However, before proceeding, he mentions that he needs to make some preparations first. Nozomi curiously asks what kind of preparations he means. Yuck Ito confirms that there is always a loophole to everything. He looks at a family photo, reminding himself of his purpose, and then focuses on what he needs before entering the dungeon. First on his list is equipment. He examines his weapon, the great sword of the silver slime, which has a 30% chance of missing due to the slime's nature of escaping from enemies. However, the sword is coated with silver slime tears, which grants a 1 in 3 chance to have the damage taken when applied to any equipment. As he finalizes his plans, Nozomi peeks around the corner, seemingly curious about what Yuck Ito is up to. His sister questions whether he will be fine wearing only light clothing when other warriors rely on heavy armor. He confidently responds that his stats are too low to equip such gear, but he has adapted to his own fighting style. Checking his status screen, he confirms that while his strength, endurance, and agility remain weak, his luck is maxed out, making him an anomaly among adventurers. Understanding his limitations, Yuck Ito acknowledges that he cannot fully equip himself with heavy gear, so his strategy revolves around using his great sword effectively. Despite this, he reassures himself that through leveling up, he has acquired valuable skills. One such ability, Great Layering Strike, gives him a 30% chance of performing a triple critical attack, a skill that compensates for his lack of raw power. Takahashi Yuck Ito prepares to leave for the dungeon when his sister asks if he plans to raise his stats. She begins to mention the monsters on the 5th floor but stops. As Yuck Ito imagines the eerie Malice Crown area, she explains that the monsters there drop the rare miracle fruit. Yuck Ito walks down the stairs, ready for his journey. His sister expresses concern and tells him to be careful. Smiling, she hands him a lunchbox, reminding him that while the fruit might fill him up, he should still have a proper meal. Yuck Ito accepts the lunchbox from his sister with a grateful smile and stores it in his inventory. He then prepares to leave, stating that he is heading out. His sister bids him farewell, telling him to see her later. Arriving at the dungeon, Yuck Ito steps into a dark, eerie forest filled with strange plants and glowing fungi. He observes a menacing, carnivorous-looking flower, realizing the kind of dangers that lurk ahead. Looking up at the towering ancient tree, he acknowledges that he has reached the 5th floor of the Tokyo dungeon, specifically the Alice Crown section, ready to face whatever challenges lie ahead. He notes that this floor is filled with plant-type monsters, which can make it easy to get lost. However, since it is still a shallow layer and already conquered by other adventurers, he believes he will not face many difficulties as long as he has his map. He soon reaches the tray ant nest and identifies the monsters that excel in ambush tactics using mimicry. The tray ants appear similar to ordinary trees, but their disguise is not perfect. As As he moves cautiously, he prepares to engage the creatures, knowing their weakness in their imperfect mimicry. Yukido analyzes the Trent's weaknesses, noting that their leaves lack veins and their roots grow in an unnatural direction. He swiftly attacks using his greatsword, launching a precise strike. As one of his projectiles lands on a disguised tree ant, it triggers the creature to reveal itself. The massive tree monster erupts from the ground, its red eyes glowing ominously as it towers over him. Yukido smirks, calling his shot as he prepares to launch his counterattack. Without hesitation, Yukido strikes, landing a critical hit, splitting the monster apart. He observes that tree ants are easy to defeat as long as he avoids their surprise attacks. Suddenly, he notices a notification, turning around to see the rare drop, the miracle fruit. Picking it up, he takes a bite, describing its taste as a mix between a pear and an apple. Takahashi Yukido looks at his status screen and acknowledges that the taste of the miracle fruit does not matter, focusing instead on the stat boost it provides. As he observes the screen, he notices that his stats are increasing and expresses his satisfaction, confirming that the fruit is indeed working. Encouraged by the results, Yukido tells himself that because of the minor stat-boosting effect of the miracle fruit, even someone with weak stats like him can become strong. Determined to maximize his gains, he decides to hunt tree ants non-stop, repeating the process of fighting and consuming the fruit to strengthen himself further. However, after consuming the same fruit repeatedly, he eventually admits to himself that he is growing tired of eating the same thing over and over. Takahashi Yukido wonders if he has already reached his growth limit while looking at his stats displayed in the air. He notes that he has finally reached the average level of a warrior. Deciding to call it a day, he stretches and considers heading back. As he turns to leave, he suddenly senses something and quickly reacts, questioning who is there. Takahashi Yukido hears voices approaching as he is about to leave. A man tells him that hogging the hunting grounds isn't good and claims they will teach him some manners. Two men appear, one tall and armored, the other short and cloaked, both grinning menacingly. Yukido turns and notes that they have no adventurer's IDs. He asks if they are crawlers. The short man confirms it and mocks Yukido, calling him a spoiled brat who relies too much on his gear. The taller man, with a sinister smile, tells Yukido that if he leaves behind his equipment, which is far beyond his position, they will at least spare his life. Subscribe now if you want to see more. The next chapter begins and one bandit is already sprawled on the ground, foaming at the mouth and completely out of commission. His supposed tough guy act didn't last more than a single hit. Takahashi Yukido barely even broke a sweat. Watching his enemy crumple, Yukido reassures himself that everything activated properly. His plan was flawless. The pathetic thug had managed to use the bee sting attack, a skill learned at level 25. Meaning this fool was actually higher level than Yukido. But levels don't mean much when you're up against sheer luck incarnate. The attack was supposed to be unavoidable, a guaranteed hit. But what good is a sure hit move when its damage gets slashed by 70%? Thanks to the silver slime tears Yukido had enchanted his clothing with, he had a 1 in 3 chance to have the damage. Guess what? Luck was on his side. While the bandit's grand plan of overwhelming Yukido crumbles, Yukido smirks. If it weren't for his insanely overpowered luck, he might have had a hole in his stomach right now. But instead here he stands completely fine while the so-called higher-level thug is eating dirt. The remaining bandit, clearly the dumber of the two, stares in absolute horror. He stammers, shocked that Yamada got one shot. What did he really think they stood a chance? Yukido, ever the generous warrior, offers him a choice. Turn yourself in and maybe, just maybe, I'll let you live. But instead of taking the obvious way out, the idiot does what idiots do best. Make bad decisions. Fueled by misplaced pride and sheer desperation, he screams, "Don't underestimate me," and starts charging a fireball. Oh sure, that'll work. Because throwing a slow-moving, predictable magic attack at someone who literally breaks the rules of probability is a brilliant idea. He actually has the nerve to claim that warriors are easy to handle from a distance. Poor guy. He doesn't know that luck always wins. Takahashi acknowledges the truth in the villain's words, admitting that he cannot reach him from where he stands. The cocky villain misinterprets this as a sign of surrender, sneering and questioning if Takahashi is giving up already. But Takahashi, unbothered and cool as ever, swiftly denies the claim and reaches into his inventory. With calm confidence, Takahashi grips a weapon and declares his choice. He will use a staff as well. As he reveals a beautifully crafted staff adorned with various flowers and leaves, The villain bursts into arrogant laughter, amused at what he believes is Takahashi's foolishness. Smirking, the villain condescendingly asks Takahashi if he even knows what kind of weapon he is holding. Takahashi, unimpressed, casually swings the staff and confirms that he does. He then explains that the weapon is called the Staff of Nonsense, a rare find he happened to pick up earlier. The villain, still convinced of his superiority, scoffs at the weapon and internally mocks Takahashi, calling him an amateur. He smugly recalls that while the Staff of Nonsense is rare, it is ultimately a piece of junk that randomly activates magic, making it completely unreliable in a real fight. But what this fool has yet to realize is that in Takahashi's hands, even random nonsense becomes a force of nature. His luck stat isn't just maxed out. It's a divine intervention in itself. The villain reassures himself that the staff is unreliable, its chances of failure far outweighing its potential success. He calculates that it has a 40% chance of failing entirely, a 30% chance of casting beginner magic, and only a 9% chance of summoning intermediate-level magic. With these odds, he smugly believes Takahashi has already lost. As Takahashi prepares to use the staff, the villain remains arrogant, convinced that even if Takahashi succeeds in casting a spell, it won't match his enhanced fireball attack. Knowing his magic power is boosted by special equipment, which makes his attack stronger. Convinced of his impending victory, he boldly declares that his win is guaranteed. Takahashi, however, remains calm, spinning his staff as the magic lottery begins. His opponent, fully believing he holds the advantage, begins his attack. With an almost theatrical display of overconfidence, he hurls a massive fireball, convinced this will be the finishing blow. Takahashi watches as his opponent's overconfidence reaches its peak. The villain grins, believing he has already won, but Takahashi remains unfazed. With a calm smirk, he finally acknowledges that the villain has taken the bait, saying that he's also finished preparing his move. He grips the Staff of Nonsense. Energy swirls around him as he activates the staff. The villain, still high on his own delusions, watches in shock as Takahashi's magic selection reveals Meteor, an advanced spell with a 0.03% chance of activation. A massive, flaming rock materializes in the sky, casting an ominous glow over the entire battlefield. Takahashi holds his staff high, commanding the very heavens, as the meteor plummets. The villain barely has time to react before his pathetic little fireball is swallowed up by the overwhelming force of the celestial calamity descending upon him. Panicked and drenched in sweat, the small villain stammers, sputtering out excuses about how this should be impossible. The sheer absurdity of Takahashi landing this spell crushes whatever scraps of confidence he had left. The flaming apocalypse crashes down, engulfing everything in its wake. The villain, once smug and arrogant, is now nothing more than a speck of dust in the face of Takahashi's overwhelming power. With effortless cool, Takahashi reminds him that's a 0.03% chance, Game over. The sheer size of the fireball looming over him forces the small villain to rationalize his fate, desperately laughing as he convinces himself that it must be an illusion. But reality is cruel, and the searing heat licking at his robes quickly proves otherwise. Panic sets in as he screams, the flames crawling up his cloak. He yells in agony, realizing too late that he has underestimated Takahashi. Desperation takes over as he begs, screaming for the attack to stop, his voice and water pressure both cracking under the pressure of impending doom. Flames engulf everything, the sheer force of the attack leaving behind nothing but scorched earth. The villain, now reduced to a charred mess, lets out a final pathetic whimper. At least the proof of him peeing his pants also got evaporated. Takahashi stands amidst the devastation he single-handedly caused. The staff no longer needed is discarded as our lucky dude says sorry for being just too lucky. He has too much luck to spare, so like and subscribe now to get some of that for yourself as well. Takahashi casts one last glance at the devastation left in his wake, the undeniable proof of his absolute victory. The once arrogant villains, who strutted in like kings of the dungeon, now lie battered, broken, and humiliated. The sheer magnitude of his power had turned their grand ambitions into nothing more than a tragic punchline. Realizing that leaving these criminals to rot in the rubble would be irresponsible, tempting, but irresponsible, he sighs and decides to drag their sorry remains back to the surface. It's a hassle, but what's another minor inconvenience for someone as unstoppable as him? With effortless strength, he restrains them, an act as easy for him as tying up loose trash, and drags them behind him as if they were weightless. The same men who had taunted him earlier are now nothing more than luggage. Upon reaching the surface, he hands the disgraced criminals over to the authorities, his job complete. The police process them, ensuring these dungeon-crawling rejects get what they deserve. By the time the formalities and endless questioning finally wrap up, the sun has long since set. Even someone as dominant as Takahashi can admit, this has been a long day. And then, without a word, he steps out. Takahashi steps into the guild, cool and composed as always, despite having just obliterated his opponents. He casually apologizes for being late, mentioning that he got caught up in some trouble, as if completely dismantling a dangerous criminal group was nothing more than a minor inconvenience. The receptionist immediately informs him that the police have already briefed them on the situation. Takahashi, ever practical, expresses relief that he won't have to explain the whole ordeal himself. Before he can relax, the receptionist suddenly bursts into celebration, ringing a bell and showering him with unexpected praise. She announces that he has ranked up to silver. For a moment, Takahashi looks genuinely taken aback. He questions if there's been a mistake, doubting whether he's really done enough to deserve such a promotion. Normally, it takes even the most talented individuals 3 years to reach silver rank. It involves countless monster hunts, item retrieval missions, and consistent contributions to the guild. Yet here Takahashi is, having shattered those expectations in record time. The receptionist reassures him that there is no mistake. The 2 people he captured were part of the Red Arm, a notorious and far-reaching organized crime group. By single-handedly taking them down, Takahashi has racked up an absurd amount of contribution points. The receptionist acknowledges Takahashi's efforts, praising him for effortlessly dealing with the criminals. Then, with an almost casual drop of a bombshell, she informs him that those 2 pathetic excuses for villains were actually silver-ranked adventurers. For a brief second, the thought crosses his mind that he might have been in more danger than he realized. But just as quickly, he throws that thought into the trash where it belongs, as he clearly has luck on his side. She expresses her excitement to see what kind of chaos he will unleash when he finally starts diving beyond the 10th floor. Copper-ranked weaklings can barely handle the 10th floor, silver ranks can push to the 30th, and gold-ranked legends roam without limits. Takahashi picks up the silver tag and casually drapes it around his neck. His next target, floor 20. The receptionist, supportive yet concerned, reminds him that the 20th floor is notoriously brutal and advises against challenging it alone. Takahashi acknowledges the receptionist's concerns with a polite but brief thank you, showing appreciation for her advice but remaining firm in his decision. As he walks through the guild hall, his thoughts linger on how quickly he ranked up. He hadn't planned on advancing so soon. He wonders if meeting those crawlers was actually a stroke of luck. Just as he's about to exit, a voice calls out to him. He turns to find an elderly man, dressed like one of those gentleman Pokemon trainers in fire red. The man asks if he can spare a moment. Takahashi casually agrees, asking what the man wants. The old gentleman inquires if he is indeed the adventurer who took down those criminals. The man gestures toward a wanted poster on the board, revealing the identities of the criminals. Yamada Junbei and Hashimoto Hiroshi, both labeled as thieves and murderers with bounties on their heads. Takahashi confirms the claim, explaining that they were the ones who attacked him first, and he simply turned the tables on them. The elderly man lowers his gaze, visibly moved. A moment later, he bows his head slightly before gripping Takahashi's hand in gratitude, thanking him with overwhelming sincerity. The man reveals that the criminals Takahashi subdued were responsible for his son's murder. These villains had been untouchable, evading even the police, yet Takahashi had single-handedly taken them down. Takahashi downplays his role, insisting that he was simply fulfilling his duty as an adventurer. However, the old man refuses to let his gratitude go unspoken. With a deep bow, he thanks Takahashi from the bottom of his heart, stating that he can finally visit his son's grave with the good news: justice has been served. As the old man slowly walks away, Takahashi reflects on a sobering realization. In his previous life, not once had he ever been thanked for something he had done. A strange warmth spreads through him. Feels good. His thoughts then shift, pulling him back into his memories. Memories of a world teetering on destruction. He recalls the inevitable collapse that awaited unless something changed. The chaos, the monsters, the despair. By the time he had understood the scope of the problem, he had already grown old. But this time he wasn't too late. Takahashi questions whether he should take action now that he knows what lies ahead. However, he quickly reins himself in, reminding himself not to get ahead of things. He acknowledges that he isn't strong enough to change the entire world. Yet, shaking off the overwhelming thoughts, he regains focus. Instead of grand ambitions, he decides on a single unwavering goal: saving his mother. That is his top priority. Meanwhile, in a dimly lit hideout, a furious thug slams his fist into the table, cursing in rage. He is in disbelief that Yamada and Hashimoto, two supposed silver-ranked criminals, were taken down so easily. His frustration grows as he realizes the consequences of their failure. With them gone, it will be harder to keep the rest of their underlings in check. Worse, their loss puts him in financial trouble. He won't be able to pay the tax to the big boss, which puts him in an even more dangerous position. With his bloodshot eyes locked onto a newspaper featuring Takahashi Yukito's face, he seethes with hatred. He swears vengeance, his voice dripping with venom as he declares that he won't let Takahashi get away with this. Despite his seething anger, a moment of hesitation flickers in his eyes. He knows Takahashi isn't just some random adventurer. He single-handedly took down two seasoned criminals with silver-rank strength. The thought makes him cautious, but it doesn't stop his bloodlust. His ego refuses to let him back down. Determined, he rises to his feet, muttering that no matter how strong Takahashi is, he has his own ways to deal with him. Pulling a white hood over his head, he smirks wickedly. The firelight flickers ominously across his face as he laughs to himself, convinced that Takahashi's so-called luck has finally run out. Takahashi arrives at the 15th floor, standing tall against the harsh, sunlit terrain. This place, lonely Death Mountain Peak, is not for the weak, not for the cowardly thugs who think strength comes in numbers and back-alley schemes. With its winding, perilous pathways and deadly drops, it's a trial by fire, a place where only the truly skilled can survive. As he spots a group of adventurers ahead, Takahashi notes how the geography itself betrays the unworthy. Here, teamwork isn't an advantage, it's a liability. This floor is infamous not just for its natural dangers but for the scum who lurk in the shadows, preying on the desperate and the lost. A fitting hideout for cowards who wouldn't last a second in a fair fight. Too bad for them, their worst nightmare just arrived. With a smirk, Takahashi moves, tossing his weapon ahead to test the ground. While lesser fighters would hesitate, calculating every step in fear, he moves with confidence, adapting instantly. His blade lands with a powerful thud, and in the next instant, he's already in motion. Then a large avian monster suddenly swoops toward him, its razor-sharp talons outstretched. Unfazed, Takahashi grips his weapon and meets the creature head-on. His objective here is clear. He will refine his skills, push his limits, and prepare for the upcoming 20th floor challenge. Each battle is just another step toward his goal. This is the perfect training ground for him, a place where he can level up efficiently. He recalls his initial plan to hunt silver slimes for experience, but after taking down too many, they have stopped spawning. Realizing he needs another method, he decides to compensate with sheer quantity. If the efficient method is gone, he will just defeat everything that stands in his way. He faces off against a variety of creatures. Massive rolling rock monsters and ferocious, bear-like beasts. Each encounter pushes him further, sharpening his reflexes and building his strength. Takahashi's presence on the 15th floor does not go unnoticed. The cloaked fool lurking in the shadows immediately recognizes him, his face twisting in irritation. He seethes at the audacity of Takahashi stepping into his so-called turf, calling him cocky for daring to exist in the same space. Despite his bluster, the villain holds back, deciding that a direct attack isn't necessary. At least not yet. He watches, biding his time like a third-rate thug hoping for an easy ambush. Takahashi, meanwhile, goes about his business, entirely unaware of, or more likely, completely uninterested in, the worms squirming in the darkness. As Takahashi sets up camp, the villain continues hyping himself up like some mastermind. He concludes that Takahashi will stay on this floor for a while and, in a moment of comedic self-importance, dramatically declares that he has come up with a good idea. With a sinister grin, he reassures himself that Takahashi doesn't even need to be taken down directly. Oh no, that would be too easy. Instead, he scurries off under the light of a red moon, fully convinced that his home court advantage will give him the upper hand. This guy is out here thinking he's some tactical genius, using the monster ecosystem to his advantage. He executes a brilliant reduce the number of predators, increase the prey plan like he's the villain in a budget-tier strategy RPG. He starts culling giant birds to destabilize the food chain. He's just setting the stage for an out-of-control infestation of overgrown bugs. The monsters he encouraged start growing at a rapid pace, swarming and breeding uncontrollably. Gripping his weapon tightly, the hooded villain mutters to himself that it's finally time. He reassures himself that what's about to happen is nothing more than an unfortunate accident. An unlucky adventurer getting caught in a swarm of reaching the edge of a pit teeming with unseen horrors. He comments on how convenient it is that no one will question the events about to unfold. If there are no witnesses, there's no crime, after all. Below him, the faint sounds of clicking and skittering of the monsters grow louder. Smirking, he pulls out a small pouch from his belt and examines it. The item in his hands is a C-rank insect repellent powder, an agent that will keep the monsters from swarming him while directing their aggression elsewhere. Everything is going exactly as planned. He tosses the powder and then swiftly disrupts the ground, sending debris tumbling down into the pit. He leans over, watching with satisfaction as the creatures begin to stir. He calls this the final touch, as the massive swarm of monstrous insects erupts from the pit, their piercing shrieks filling the air. He triumphantly urges them to hunt their target down, referring to Takahashi with open contempt. He tells the creatures to devour his enemy whole, making it clear that he wants nothing left behind, not even a bone. Takahashi cuts through a beast with a precise slash. Suddenly, he hears an unusual buzzing sound behind him. The faint hum grows louder, and his instincts sharpen. Curious and slightly wary, Takahashi looks up, scanning his surroundings. He wonders what the sound could be. As he moves forward, a dark mass starts to rise in the distance. A swarm of black-winged creatures surges forth like a living storm. Initially mistaking them for clouds, Takahashi's thoughts quickly correct themselves. This is no natural phenomenon. His realization is immediate. A swarm of death hoppers, monstrous insect-like predators, is bearing down upon him. Recognizing the sheer number of them, Takahashi grips his weapon tightly, knowing that facing them alone is suicide. This is not a battle he can brute force his way through. Making a split-second decision, he turns and sprints. Monsters is just an expected outcome in a place like this. The swarm pursues, filling the air like a black tide of destruction. As he runs, he acknowledges the inevitable. He needs allies. The 15th floor may have been a perfect training ground for a solo fighter, but even he has limits. He contemplates where he could find a gathering place for adventurers. Just as he considers his options, something clicks in his mind. He recalls a detail, one that might change the course of this battle. Takahashi recalls from his past life that there should be a supply base somewhere on this floor. The triangular mountain base had made clearing the lonely Death Mountain peak significantly easier. It's also known as a red dirt cave. However, Takahashi is puzzled. He reviews his notes and the walkthrough file but finds no mention of this supposed base. Something about its omission doesn't sit right with him. He eventually finds himself in front of a towering, jagged mountain. He jumps down and bounces off of a massive, grotesque frog. Examining the rocky surface ahead, he notes a subtle difference in soil color, suggesting a hidden entrance. He calls out loudly, warning of a monster panic, and pleading for assistance, testing whether anyone inside the base will respond. As Takahashi glances to the sky, a thick cloud of insects swarms toward him, sending a chill down his spine. He recognizes the threat and decides there is no time to hesitate. Declaring that it's an emergency, Takahashi swings his weapon with force, smashing into the cave wall. He insists that he will force his way in if necessary. The impact sends debris flying, revealing the hidden entrance. Inside, an unsettling sight unfolds. Numerous unconscious or barely conscious adventurers are sprawled across the ground, stripped to their undergarments, their bodies showing signs of exhaustion and captivity. Seeing the horrifying scene, Takahashi's expression shifts from determination to shock. Maybe he is no longer as lucky as before. Takahashi discovers a group of bound and gagged captives lying helplessly on the ground. At first, he jokingly questions whether he has walked into someone's strange hobbies, but the frantic, muffled protests of the prisoners quickly make it clear that this is a serious situation. Realizing the urgency, Takahashi swiftly cuts through their restraints. One of the captives expresses gratitude, admitting that they had believed they were doomed. Seeking answers, Takahashi asks what had happened, and one of the freed prisoners explains that they were ambushed by crawlers and rendered unconscious by an abnormal status effect. Another captive deduces that since they weren't killed outright, they were likely meant to be sold off, prompting a red-haired woman to exclaim in horror that this must be a case of human trafficking. As Takahashi surveys the shaken group of survivors, he pieces together the grim reality. This place is the crawlers' crime den, a hideout where they store and possibly trade their human captives. Takahashi questions whether this place was supposed to be a supply base for adventurers, but he quickly realizes that he may have stumbled upon something that hasn't happened yet. His mind flashes to a future event where the public authorities are set to capture the crawlers that once occupied this base. In time, their base would be repurposed into a haven for adventurers. Realizing that he has discovered the site before history unfolds as he remembers, he admits to himself that in his past life, he was oblivious to much of the world around him, having been singularly focused on slimes for 70 years. The absurdity of his past priorities amuses him, especially when recalling the old master's skewed perception of time, treating even those in their 40s and 50s as mere children. Shaking off the thought, he refocuses on the present. Given the circumstances, he knows they must make do with whatever manpower they have available. He must rally the kidnapped adventurers to face an impending swarm of deadly monsters. With determination, he clenches his fist and urges them to cooperate if they wish to survive. Though some hesitate, pointing out the overwhelming number of enemies, Takahashi stresses that time is running out, making teamwork their only viable option. Takahashi listens as a girl panics, insisting that their situation is impossible since they don't have any weapons or armor. Another captive agrees and explains that all of their equipment was stolen by the crawlers. Unfazed, Takahashi reassures them that if they need equipment, he has plenty. He then accesses his inventory through a glowing interface, swiftly selecting items. Weapons and armor begin materializing in front of him as he confidently states that he has so much that it would otherwise rot away. The captives stare in awe as the equipment piles up. Takahashi encourages them to take whatever they need. One of the men, still processing the situation, hesitantly asks if Takahashi is being serious. Realizing the significance of the items before him, he exclaims that these are all top-tier pieces of equipment from this floor. Another captive, a young woman, marvels at the rare gear and wonders how Takahashi managed to gather so much. Meanwhile, another man watches Takahashi suspiciously, questioning who he really is. Takahashi has never been in the rankings, making others even more curious about his identity. As the group begins choosing weapons, one person excitedly picks a sword, while another complains that it is unfair and decides to take a spear. A woman prioritizes armor over weapons, claiming that her newly acquired breastplate is a perfect fit. Another adventurer, impressed by the quality of the gear, comments that if sold, it would be worth a fortune. A cautious woman asks if they can really take all the equipment, to which Takahashi reassures her that they can. Takahashi clarifies that he is not expecting anything in exchange, but he then makes a request. He asks if they will let him take command. Uncertain, a woman asks what they should do, while another points out that Takahashi saved their lives. Another adventurer agrees, adding that he also provided them with valuable equipment. A woman, now confident, declares that she will follow his orders. With the group seemingly convinced of Takahashi's capabilities, they prepare to take on the challenge ahead, relying on his leadership. Takahashi, now facing the group, expresses gratitude for their cooperation. His expression briefly turns serious as he remembers how in the past people just disrespected him, while now they show their trust upon him. He then lays out the strategy, suggesting they take advantage of the cave's narrow entrance to limit the number of enemies they must face at once. With a simple diagram, he explains that by positioning themselves correctly, they can control the flow of monsters. He declares that for now, they only need to focus on reducing their numbers. The group members, now armed and prepared, nervously nod, determined to fight alongside him. Takahashi grips his weapon firmly, his confident smirk reflecting his readiness for battle. His weapon glows with a bright blue energy, signifying his strength and resolve. With a commanding stance, he announces that it's time for battle, rallying the group behind him. The monsters keep coming as Takahashi continues slashing away, but no matter how many he cuts down, they swarm like relentless mosquitoes. The others fight with everything they've got, trying to destroy as many as possible, yet the insect horde is simply too vast. Exhaustion starts setting in for everyone, while the mosquitoes show no signs of stopping. Takahashi realizes, just like the others do, that there seems to be no end to them. It becomes painfully clear that this strategy of fighting isn't working. At this rate, there's no hope of winning against such an overwhelming swarm. Then, suddenly, the situation worsens. The ceiling begins to collapse around them. Takahashi shouts for everyone to retreat immediately but warns them to maintain formation. As they run, the swarm chases after them. The falling debris disrupts some of the insects, but they remain focused solely on their prey. If this continues, the entire mountain could collapse. Space is running out, and the group is close to being overrun. Things are looking grim, and it feels like there's no chance of survival. In a desperate glance around, Takahashi notices that they're inside an abandoned, unstable mine. He recalls that this could mean explosives were left behind by the crawlers to expand their base. This might just be the lucky break they need. Quickly examining the area, he spots what appear to be explosives and realizes they could use them. Without hesitation, Takahashi yells to everyone, telling them there's dynamite scattered around and urging them to start searching immediately. Everyone immediately starts searching, though they're still unsure of what to actually do with the explosives. They know the dynamite can be used as weapons, but in the chaos of the current situation, they have no clear plan. Despite that, they continue desperately fighting against the Death Hoppers. The battle drags on for several hours, during which nearly 2/3 of the triangular mountain is destroyed, but the swarm shows no signs of stopping. Eventually, they find themselves completely cornered. Their stamina is gone, and even the surrounding walls seem unlikely to hold much longer. Realizing the urgency, Takahashi looks around and decides that he has no choice now. He has to do it. He calls out to everyone, asking them to hand over all the dynamite they found. One by one, the others throw their explosives toward him. While they cooperate, they voice their doubts, saying that even with all the dynamite, it likely won't be enough to wipe out the swarm. The monsters just keep coming no matter how many they take down, so these explosions might feel like pouring water on hot stones. But Takahashi isn't planning to blow up the monsters directly. His plan is different. He intends to use the dynamite to destroy the cliff and bury the swarm beneath it. He understands how monsters with low intelligence tend to prioritize targets that pose the greatest threat. In other words, they will naturally target the one who has killed the most, Takahashi himself. That means drawing them all to him where the dynamite is concentrated should work. Suddenly, another cave-in occurs, and the ceiling is on the verge of completely collapsing. Takahashi tells everyone to run. Some of them question if he plans to die along with the Death Hoppers. They're unsure if it'll even work. After all, warriors can't typically use explosives. But Takahashi simply asks them to believe in him. Just as he predicted, the entire swarm charges straight toward him. And in that moment, Takahashi knows there are times in life when a man has to take risks. For Takahashi, That moment of taking a risk had clearly arrived. Without hesitating any further, he pressed the button to activate all 13 sticks of dynamite. As he did, he leapt down the cliff, cursing the damned grasshoppers. A system notification immediately popped up, warning him that since he didn't possess the explosive aptitude skill, the probability of detonation was only 50%. Being a warrior-class individual meant his chances of successfully triggering the bombs were already low, but with his high luck stat, he still believed he could pull it off. However, another notification appeared, this time informing him that the items were crude, further lowering the success rate to a mere 25%. Takahashi began to pray, hoping against hope that it would work, and then the system confirmed, use successful. It had worked. Explosions erupted, engulfing everything around him in fire and chaos. The monsters were consumed by the blast, their formations thrown into disarray. Meanwhile, Takahashi was still falling, so he began using falling debris to control and slow his descent. With a quick move, he unleashed his great layering strike with his sword to clear more space below. However, one particularly stubborn grasshopper monster was still alive, possibly determined to avenge its fallen swarm. But Takahashi wasn't going to let it stop him. He delivered a powerful bee-sting attack, landing a critical hit that finished it off instantly. Still, the effort had taken the last of his momentum. It seemed like he wouldn't be able to stop his fall in time. In desperation, he tried to jam his sword into the cliffside to anchor himself, but it didn't hold. He wished for just a bit more strength. Thankfully, at the last moment, a rope was thrown down to him. The others managed to pull him back up. The ravine below, once swarming with monstrous death hoppers, 10,000 strong, was now littered with their remains. Against all odds, Takahashi had won his gamble. He had saved everyone, and even they were stunned that not a single casualty had occurred despite the scale of the monster panic. Takahashi smiled in relief, proud of what he had pulled off, and the system confirmed his victory by notifying him of the massive number of death hoppers he had exterminated. This grants him the title Exterminator, which increases the damage dealt to insect-type monsters by 20%. His level also increases by 3, granting him a new skill, Warrior's Intuition. The enemy cannot believe that Takahashi managed to completely stop the monster panic, and even crushed Shinogi. It's all incredibly frustrating for the villain. At this rate, his biggest fear is getting taken out by the ones above him. And it's all because of that bastard Takahashi who just refuses to die. In a fit of rage, he even smashes the bottle he was drinking from. He's beyond angry now, completely unhinged. To him, there's only one path forward. Take Takahashi down, no matter the cost, even if it means sacrificing everything, including his own life. Meanwhile, on Takahashi's side, his reputation has skyrocketed. Even the receptionist praises him for achieving incredible feats time and again. People around immediately recognize him as Mountain Crusher Yukido Takahashi, the hero who just saved more lives. Many approach him with offers to join their guilds, eager to recruit someone of his caliber. But Takahashi politely declines, saying he's in a rush and can't afford to form companions just yet. Despite everyone's eagerness to team up with him, he knows joining others would only complicate his journey toward obtaining the elixir. In group battles, reward distribution is random, and the rarity of drop items from others is low. This means his luck stat won't work as omnipotently as it usually does. Still, he's okay with that. He went solo in his past life, and there's no reason to change that now. As dusk falls, Takahashi and his family gather around a delicious meal. He urges them to eat as much as they want. But before eating, they bow their heads in prayer, thanking God for the food. When they begin eating, Takahashi savors the nostalgic taste. It reminds him of how, even though they were poor, they never missed celebrating special occasions. His sister finds it amazing that he's already challenging the 20th floor. Their mother, however, is worried. She's heard from neighbors that the 20th floor is where everything starts to change. Takahashi's sister also expresses her concern, mentioning some statistics that show only around 15% of people succeed in conquering the 20th floor. However, their mother gently scolds her, telling her not to use her phone during meals. Takahashi reassures his family that everything will be fine, reminding them of the many things he has already accomplished. As his mother looks over newspaper clippings detailing his achievements, she smiles, saying she's happy to see him doing good in the world, but she still doesn't want her son to push himself too hard. No parent, she says, wants to see their child sacrifice themselves for others. Hearing this, Takahashi remembers her fate in his previous life and quietly replies that no child wants to see their parents suffer either. The mother tries to protest again, but the sister steps in and tells her to calm down, saying that it can't be helped. Her brother is stubborn, after all. Once he sets his mind on something, not even a lever could move him. Their mother chuckles and says that this part of him is just like his father. father. Takahashi then begins eating, asking his family to stop worrying about him because he's doing this because he wants to. With that, the mother and sister also start enjoying the meal. Takahashi reflects on how, in his previous life, he couldn't save his mother, and that failure still feels like a stake through his heart. To erase the past and start life anew, he knows he needs the elixir. Once the meal is finished, he prays again in gratitude, before heading to the Tokyo Dungeon's 20th floor, the Great Wall beyond physics. As he charges forward, all the monsters in his path appear inorganic and weak, and he cuts through them with ease. However, he still notes that heartless, cold-blooded killers are a real threat. As more inorganic monsters attack from his blind spots, he observes that while they lack emotion, their behavior is highly systematic. Still, his agility is more than enough to keep him alive, and he continues moving forward without hesitation. A powerful monster marked by a danger-signifying red light appears in front of Takahashi. It's a bulky beast, seemingly the type to charge head-on. Takahashi assumes it will try a direct assault, and he thinks that if he can just analyze their attack patterns well enough, he could make significant progress. For now, he focuses on dodging, avoiding the monster's extremely heavy and destructive strikes that shatter the ground within seconds. Still, Takahashi believes he can defeat it with precision and speed, using his swift, sharp, and well-aimed slashing attacks. After all, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. Eventually, he reaches a massive gate and wastes no time pushing it open. Today marks the beginning of his new life, and as the gate creaks open, a new light, one of hope, shines brightly upon him. The massive gate opens into an enormous chamber. As Takahashi steps inside, the gate slams shut behind him, cutting off any chance of escape, at least for now. Then, from a red magic circle on the floor, a powerful monster emerges. It's another inorganic type, but this one is covered in vegetation, as if it hails from an ancient era. A fusion of organic and inorganic matter. This is the ancient golem, the boss of the 20th floor. The creature has a tough exterior and high attack power, but that's about all it has. Takahashi, full of confidence, dashes forward to land a clean strike. For a boss, its speed is fairly average, and it has no hope of dodging Takahashi's precise slashes. If he keeps chipping away at it, he should eventually hit its weak spot, the core, and win. However, a sinister figure watches and laughs as the battle unfolds. Suddenly, another red magic circle appears, and a second ancient golem begins to rise. This catches Takahashi completely off guard. He didn't expect a second boss, especially not with the door locked behind him. He suspects the presence of an intruder but can't sense anyone nearby. Still, this situation feels too deliberate. Even rookies wouldn't accidentally trigger a double raid in the middle of a boss fight, especially on the 20th floor. Then, out of nowhere, a knife flies toward him, but Takahashi reacts in time, deflecting it with a swift sword slash. Now, he's certain this is no accident. Someone else is here. The hidden villain, watching from the shadows, is frustrated Takahashi managed to react so quickly, but he grins and draws another knife. In his mind, it doesn't matter, he still holds the overwhelming advantage. When he first heard Takahashi was attempting to reach this floor, he thought the guy had to be a fool. After all, this boss wasn't one you were supposed to fight alone. The villain had deliberately followed Takahashi to trigger the second boss's appearance. To make things even more favorable for himself, he didn't need to worry about being noticed by the boss either. After all, he was a high-level thief with far greater experience than Takahashi, and his stealth skills allowed him to completely erase his presence. One of those skills, cat feet, enabled him to move silently without making a sound. He continued provoking the enemy and, just when the boss was about to attack, used shadow crossing to vanish, leaving Takahashi to fend off monsters from both the front and back. To make matters worse, the villain had also brought an invisibility cloak, an S-rank rare item that significantly reduced his visibility even against bosses. Confident that Takahashi wouldn't be able to detect him, he now turned the battle into an unfair 3 versus 1. From the shadows, he threw poisoned knives at Takahashi, striking him with ease. However, the poison's effectiveness check failed, something that shocked the villain. He couldn't understand how the poison had failed. Was Takahashi somehow hiding anti-poison gear under that lightweight armor? Still, he laughed. It didn't matter. The knives were just to keep Takahashi occupied. He had more tricks up his sleeve. He had already laid traps all around the arena, his specialty. He preferred relying on himself and his traps rather than incompetent allies who could ruin everything. These traps had never failed him before, and with so many in place, Takahashi's movement was now severely limited. From this point on, All he had to do was let the boss finish Takahashi off. The villain giggled like a maniac from the shadows, completely convinced that his plan was flawless. Takahashi fights with all his might against the monsters while the villain lounges comfortably, watching the show from afar. Both ancient golems relentlessly attack Takahashi, who surprisingly manages to dodge their heavy blows using his agility. This alone is enough to surprise the villain, but the real shock comes when Takahashi suddenly looks directly at him and asks if he's already out of magic tricks. The villain is stunned. He never expected Takahashi to locate him. Now slightly panicked, he watches as Takahashi casually tells him not to just sit there and suggests he say something, especially since he apparently likes him enough to stalk him this much. Takahashi then throws a knife toward the villain's direction. Though startled, the villain manages to deflect it in time. He demands to know how Takahashi discovered his hiding spot. Takahashi replies coolly that it was just his warrior's intuition, a well-known skill. But the villain doesn't buy it. He refuses to believe that a lower-ranked warrior could possibly detect a high-level thief like himself. Yet Takahashi doesn't bother arguing. Instead, he simply asks what the villain plans to do about it. Run away? This provocation infuriates the villain. He tears off his hood and draws his swords, unwilling to be looked down upon. In his mind, he's far superior to Takahashi. Fueled by rage, he charges forward. Their swords clash violently, sending sparks flying in all directions. But Takahashi meets the strike head-on, parrying with such force that the villain is knocked backward. Standing tall, Takahashi calmly repeats the line the villain had uttered earlier, except now, it's clear. That line belongs only to the one still standing. The villain angrily demands how Takahashi could possibly find him using nothing but a mere warrior's intuition, convinced that it has to be a lie. But Takahashi calmly clarifies that he isn't lying. He really did activate the skill, and the system information confirms it. Warrior's intuition is a skill that detects danger in the user's surroundings, but the chances of it activating are incredibly low. A 99% failure rate, only 0.9% chance of success, and a mere 0.1% for a great success. Yet, probability is meaningless when faced with Takahashi's extreme luck. Thanks to that luck, he achieved a great success, granting him awareness of every threat in the field. That alone explains why the villain finds it hard to believe, because it's something almost impossible under normal circumstances. Takahashi keeps a sharp eye on the battlefield using the mental map granted by Warrior's intuition, tracking every movement as the villain dashes in again. The villain acknowledges that Takahashi is surprisingly fast for a warrior at his level. Takahashi thanks him for the compliment but stays locked in combat, exchanging blows with precision. The villain scoffs that despite his speed, Takahashi is still just a warrior, and when it comes to agility, the villain believes he's in another league entirely. That confidence shows as he effortlessly dodges Takahashi's slashes and lands a clean cut on him. However, thanks to his high luck stat, Takahashi manages to avoid the paralysis effect from the attack. The villain, though unaware of the exact number behind Takahashi's luck, admits that he deserves credit for preparing against abnormal status effects too. With a swift move, Takahashi attempts to slash at the villain from behind, but the villain still dodges, claiming Takahashi's situation is as hopeless as ever. That is, until Takahashi activates Sting, and his sword begins to emit a brilliant cascade of sparks, signaling a shift in the battle. The villain immediately recognizes Sting as a guaranteed hit, but continues laughing, confidently dodging even this attack using his butterfly dance. This starts to worry Takahashi, as even a supposedly guaranteed strike is missing its mark. When two conflicting skills like guaranteed hit and perfect evasion clash, the outcome ultimately depends on stats, and in that regard, the villain holds the upper hand. He wins that clash and keeps pressing forward, relentlessly slashing at Takahashi, who now has cuts all over his body. Mocking him, the villain jeers that a slow warrior like Takahashi could never catch someone like him, especially in an arena where the boss monsters are also targeting him. He boasts that the 20th floor is perfect for him. He can play around however he likes. But suddenly, Takahashi manages to redirect one of the boss's attacks toward the villain. Even then, the villain just laughs, claiming he can dodge the boss without even looking. It moves in a predictable pattern, he explains, information that anyone can simply buy from the guild. Takahashi remains silent, choosing not to respond. He focuses all his attention on the fight, though frustration begins to build. He's been taking damage not just from the villain but also from the traps scattered throughout the arena. The villain then taunts him again, asking if he's figured it out yet, that there are no irregulars on the 20th floor, which means, in his eyes, this fight was already decided the moment he began preparing for it. With a smirk, the villain unleashes Scorpion's Edge. Takahashi quickly raises his sword to block, but the force behind the strike is too overwhelming. He's sent flying into the wall, his weapon clattering to the ground. As he starts to sweat, dazed and wounded, the villain appears above him, confident that this is the end. He raises his blade, fully intent on finishing the fight. As the villain declares Takahashi's end, Takahashi suddenly screams, but then changes his expression and says he was just kidding. With a smirk, he interacts with a nearby brick that begins to glow, triggering a massive sphere to appear around the villain. The villain instantly recognizes it as a gravity trap and realizes he's now stuck inside it. Takahashi mocks him, recalling how the villain had confidently claimed there were no irregulars, when clearly there is one now. The villain struggles, unable to even move his mouth properly under the crushing pressure. He tries to question what Takahashi means, but his voice is barely intelligible. Takahashi calmly explains that the intel the villain had only applied under normal conditions. They never accounted for some idiot barging into a boss battle mid-fight. Now the villain understands, but that doesn't stop him from being furious. Meanwhile, the golem bosses reactivate, and as Takahashi skillfully dodges their blows, he points out the irony. A self-proclaimed thief failed to notice a top-tier hidden trap. The villain, enraged and humiliated, screams in denial, but before he can do anything, the bosses shift their attention to him. One of them smashes him hard, sending him flying out of the gravity sphere and into a wall. The hit is devastating. As he lies there, stunned, the golem grabs him and inflicts even more damage. The villain thinks back in disbelief. How did this all go so wrong? Even his advanced search skills couldn't detect that trap. Now, completely immobilized, he's left wondering how it all unraveled. Takahashi stands tall and coolly reminds him, just like he said earlier, it was all thanks to his warrior's intuition. Hopefully now, it's clear that he wasn't lying from the start. If you also want luck that badass, then like the video now and comment if you want to see more of this lucky bastard. With the villain battered and sprawled on the ground, Takahashi tells him to stay put and adds that if the man is still breathing after Takahashi defeats the boss, he will drag him to the police himself. Then Takahashi turns his full attention to the boss. The villain, however, refuses to be ignored. He laughs like a madman, announcing that he intends to drag Takahashi to hell, and he points to the crates of high-grade explosives stacked around him, far deadlier than the cheap stock Takahashi confiscated earlier. Takahashi asks if the man has lost his mind, but the villain only laughs harder while confirming a prompt on his detonator. He presses the button without hesitation. A massive explosion rips through the room, and the shock wave flings Takahashi into a dark void below. The fall hurts, yet he is still alive. When his eyes adjust, he realizes he has landed in a hidden chamber deep beneath the battlefield. Moments later, the boss monster crashes down beside him, eager for another round. Feeling cornered, Takahashi scans the cramped space and notices a treasure chest glowing in the gloom. He reasons that hidden rooms and treasure often go hand in hand and decides this must be where he was meant to end up. Space is far too tight for evasive maneuvers against two monsters at once, so he resolves to gamble everything on whatever lies inside that chest. He darts toward it, weaving past the monster's attacks and pinning all his hopes on the treasure waiting within. For the moment, he manages to keep going. He bounds off the monster's hide, lands, and hurls himself straight toward the chest. The creature swings again and again, yet he presses on until one blow slams him into the wall. He checks his limbs and grins in relief. At least his spine is still intact. Then he notices the boss's enormous foot arcing toward him. He tells himself that if this stomp connects, he may never reach the chest. He tries to duck, but the foot hits hard. White-hot pain shoots through him, locking his legs. Gasping, he pounds the ground with a fist, refusing to quit. The agony urges him to stay down, yet he drags himself forward, determined to learn what the chest contains. Another attack thunders nearby, but he compares this pain with the bleak 70 years he has already endured and insists it is nothing. Inch by inch, he crawls until his fingers brush the chest's lid. He flips it open and finds a single bracelet inside. The sight makes him smile. This could be the edge he needs. The boss looms behind him, preparing another strike. He slips the bracelet onto his wrist, feeling hope surge back through his battered body, and vows to keep fighting. The item turns out to be a warp bracelet, a rare artifact that grants its wearer short-range teleportation. It is exactly what Takahashi needs. When a system prompt asks whether he wishes to activate the bracelet, he selects yes without hesitation. A split second before the monster's claw reaches him, another prompt warns that his profession is not compatible with the bracelet. The activation chance drops to 50%. The monster gains enough time to land a punishing blow that sends Takahashi reeling. A fresh alert follows, noting that his current magic power is below the required threshold and lowering the success rate to 35%. As the creature's fist drives toward him again, The display updates. Success probability now 15%. Takahashi gambles anyway. The monster smashes the spot where he lay, kicking up a cloud of dust, only for the system to confirm that the warp succeeded. Takahashi reappears above the creature, sword poised, and brings the blade down with all his strength. He feels certain victory is at hand. The boss's core flares crimson and launches a searing laser upward. Takahashi admits the monster's resilience is impressive, especially after surviving the earlier explosion, but he refuses to be discouraged. He triggers another warp, blinking to a vantage near the stunned boss. Years of grinding have conditioned him for repetition. The rapid teleportation barely phases him now. Yet the boss lurches back into motion and another monster barrels toward him with a colossal punch. Takahashi warps again, sidesteps behind them, and delivers a sweeping slash. His strike forces the two giants to collide, turning their combined mass against itself, and giving him the opening he has fought so hard to create. It no longer matters to him how many times he must repeat the maneuver. Refusing to give up, he keeps warping around the battlefield, landing strike after strike on the twin bosses. Whenever a monster lashes out, he simply teleports elsewhere and carves another gash into its hide. After countless cuts, the monster's health plummets. He tells himself he won't stop until the dice finally show a 6, then keeps rolling until luck bends in his favor. Spotting the perfect moment, he positions himself between the two charging golems, then warps away. The creatures crash into each other at full speed, sustaining massive damage while he reappears above them. From that vantage, he unleashes Sting, driving a critical blow straight down. They are mindless constructs, so he exploits their lack of strategy. Layering another aerial strike, he keeps hammering them with unwavering resolve. At last, he spends the last of his strength on a devastating slash, one of his ultimate attacks. Exhaustion hits, he tries to warp again but receives a warning that the bracelet's charge has run out. Without teleportation, he plummets toward the floor. Even as he falls, a system prompt appears. The ancient golems have been defeated. He has won, though he is down as well. Another notification announces that player Takahashi Ito has obtained a legendary rank reward, 2 elixirs. Relief floods him. He uncorks one vial and drinks it in a single gulp. Green lightning crackles around him as the potion's magic knits his wounds. Moments later, he is fully healed, bathed in the light streaming from the shattered roof, still clutching the second elixir for whatever comes next. A new notification appears, informing him that, by meeting special conditions, Takahashi Ito has earned the title Survivor. His attributes rise accordingly: Endurance +10, Solo Double Giant Killing Strength +20, and Enforcer of Justice Dexterity +10. Once his inventory check confirmed everything was in order, Takahashi flashed a satisfied grin. With a swift leap, he climbed out of the pit, only to spot a heap of discarded clothes nearby. Thinking they might serve as evidence against Kito, he scooped them up before heading for the exit. Back on the surface, he reported the entire incident to the guild and presented the clothes as proof. The receptionist was visibly shaken and promised to fetch a supervisor at once. The atmosphere all but screamed trouble. The supervisor appeared and requested an interview for public relations purposes, but Takahashi apologized and said he had pressing business elsewhere. Outside, he broke into a run. His priority was to reach home and deliver the elixir to his mother. As he hurried along the street, passers-by pointed him out. TV screens were already looping footage of Ito Takahashi, fastest to clear the 20th floor and slayer of 2 bosses. Ignoring the attention, he raced on. At last he reached home, opened the door, and was greeted by his smiling sister and mother. Holding up the elixir, he announced his return. Later, at the hospital, the doctor emerged with the test results. Takahashi and his sister tensed, hoping for good news. The doctor reviews the chart, smiles, and explains that, in simple terms, Yuki-san's illness has been completely cured. The news is exactly what Takahashi and his sister have been praying for. Takahashi struggles to believe it, but the elixir has done its work. The doctor repeats that the test results are genuine. The potion's effects were simply that powerful. Overcome with relief, the sister hugs their mother and weeps, saying she is grateful beyond words. The mother squeezes Takahashi's hand and thanks him, insisting the miracle is entirely his doing. Takahashi, still overwhelmed, can only murmur that he should be the one thanking her. At last he manages to say the words he has always wanted to tell his mother. The sister, still sniffling, laughs and reminds him they are standing in front of the doctor, and should save the heartfelt speeches for home. Takahashi laughs as well and admits she is right. She wipes her tears and teases him about paying better attention to his surroundings. Their joy fills the hospital room until a dark presence intrudes. A towering figure steps in, lamenting aloud that such a kind family will soon drown in sorrow. He remarks that, at least in a hospital, staff can claim they tried their best before declaring the cause of death as a heart attack. He cocks his fist, ready to strike, but Takahashi whips out his sword and blocks the blow. The attacker reels back in surprise. Takahashi, furious, demands an explanation. The knight, puzzled, wonders aloud how Takahashi can still move after all that. As Takahashi's anger flares, recognition dawns on him. The intruder is Wayama Cosmolite, ranked #1 among adventurers, revered as the savior and known simply as the hero. Wayama confirms the identity, stating that he is indeed the real deal. Takahashi is still baffled. If Cosmolite is truly the hero, why would he attack Nozomi? Cosmolite responds that, before answering, he has a question of his own. He explains that only those whose souls have tasted death are able to move within this void barrier, a revelation that reminds Takahashi of his own brush with death. From Cosmolite's point of view, the only logical explanation is that Takahashi is a regressor, someone who died and then rewound time. Takahashi also realizes the implication. Cosmolite must be a regressor as well, one who may have used his second chance to slide toward villainy. Takahashi asks whether, by saying also, Cosmolite is admitting that this is his second life as well. Cosmolite confirms it and adds that, since Takahashi is likewise a regressor, he hopes their encounter can end quickly. He explains that he is simply removing every factor he believes will lead to the world's destruction. Staring at his sister, Takahashi demands to know what she could possibly have to do with such a catastrophe. Cosmolite replies that she is one of the key variables. In the future, her negative effect on her eventual husband will set off a chain of events culminating in the planet's ruin. Hearing this, Takahashi realizes that he himself was meant to be that husband. Cosmolite stresses that the man's influence is global and that the breakdown of his marriage becomes an indirect trigger for the apocalypse. Therefore, eliminating Nozomi early is, in his view, the safest course. He expects Takahashi to accept this logic. Instead, Takahashi erupts in anger and insists the present timeline is no longer the same. Cosmolite laughs at what he calls Takahashi's foolish optimism. Takahashi counters that he has already cured their mother's illness, so Nozomi no longer needs night work to cover medical bills, and will never meet the man she was originally destined to marry. In his eyes, Cosmolite's drastic measure is unnecessary. Cosmolite concedes that Takahashi's argument might be correct, but then grows cold and forms a glyph with his hands. He states that, rather than trusting a hypothesis, he would rather guarantee the outcome by removing Nozomi here and now. Takahashi blocks him, vowing that he will never allow his sister to be harmed. Cosmolite sighs, admits this obstacle is troublesome, and remarks that he would have preferred not to kill Takahashi, but he will do so if forced. Cosmolite insists he is acting only to save lives and hopes to keep needless casualties to a minimum. Takahashi tells him to leave, but the hero refuses. After a moment's thought, Cosmolite offers another option. They should fight. If Takahashi can stand against him, it will prove that his claim about changing the future has merit. Takahashi never wanted the situation to escalate, yet Cosmolite says he merely wishes to know whether Takahashi is special enough to justify taking a risk. The hero's condescending air is exactly what Takahashi would expect from the famous savior. With a casual apology, Cosmolite projects his status window, level 50, every attribute, strength, endurance, dexterity, agility, magic power, and magic resistance, pushed to its maximum. The gap between them is staggering. Even so, Cosmolite argues that the logic is simple. If Takahashi lacks power, he will fail to protect anyone, whether the world itself or the people he loves. Any true regressor should already understand that lesson. At last, Cosmolite presents an ultimatum. Takahashi can allow his sister to die or choose to fight. For Takahashi, there is no real choice, yet he hesitates for an instant, wondering whether the warp bracelet still carries enough charge for him to escape with Nozomi instead. After weighing his options, Takahashi concludes that running would only offer a temporary reprieve. He cannot guard Nozomi every hour of the day. Resolute, he raises his sword and chooses to fight. Cosmolite commends the show of spirit, yet tells him he is not expected to achieve the impossible, merely to survive the 10-minute span of the void barrier. When Takahashi asks whether the battle will take place in the hospital, Cosmolite declines, saying the building must not be destroyed. The hero steps outside, and Takahashi watches him descend through the window. He spares a final glance at his sister, steels himself to protect her, and leaps after Cosmolite to face him on neutral ground. Outside the hospital, Cosmolite draws his sword, plants his feet and observes that the open ground will do. Takahashi lands nearby, unsheathing his own blade and remarking that he hopes the hero will go easy on him. Cosmolite laughs and replies that his first test is simply to see whether Takahashi can handle the basics. With a casual flick of his finger, Cosmolite summons a ring of magic circles that immediately unleash volleys of elemental spells. The onslaught feels excessive for a tutorial, especially since the hero casts without even a chant, but Takahashi relies on swift footwork and rapid sword strokes to slice each projectile apart. Deciding that this resistance should pose no real challenge, Cosmolite blurs forward so quickly he appears to multiply, and in truth he has. While the surrounding copies tighten the encirclement, he notes that being outnumbered is a situation any adventurer should expect. Takahashi, unimpressed, tosses several substitute dolls. The clones rush the decoys while he meets the real Cosmolites strike head-on. Cosmolite concedes that Takahashi is well prepared but warns that pure defense will never win a fight. Takahashi agrees and counters by exploiting the system's allowance for simultaneous item use. He channels power into a colossal fireball and hurls it at the hero, not expecting victory from a single spell, but hoping at least to force an opening. The blast vaporizes the clones, yet Cosmolite remains untouched behind a regression bonus called Void Barrier. Commenting that Takahashi's own bonus must be extraordinary luck, he steps through the dissipating flames. Takahashi scowls, realizing his attack achieved little more than clearing the duplicates, and braces himself for the next exchange. Takahashi admits, at least to himself, that Cosmolite can read a battlefield perfectly. Cosmolite agrees, adding that luck alone will never handle every threat. As proof, he begins weaving together another barrage. Overlapping magic circles bloom around him, summoning swarms of elemental spirits that close in on Takahashi like a living net. Takahashi readies his blade and reminds himself that luck cannot carry the whole fight. He remembers the one weakness he spotted in the hero's status window, an almost non-existent luck stat. Exploiting that flaw is his only chance. He dislikes resorting to cheap tricks in front of his family, yet protecting them steals his resolve. If he must turn his heart to ice, so be it. As fire and water spirits dive toward him, Takahashi pulls the warp bracelet from his inventory. His plan is simple: make every remaining outcome tilt in his favor. A warning flashes: profession incompatible, activation chance 50%. A second alert follows: insufficient magic power, activation chance 35%. The hostile spells close in. He gambles anyway, triggers the bracelet, and the warp succeeds. In a blink, Takahashi skips clear of the converging elements. The whole street is at a standstill as Takahashi lands on the roof of a parked car. Cosmolite concedes that the warp bracelet is undeniably handy, though he prefers relying on his own flight magic rather than paying the bracelet's steep price. Takahashi apologetically tells him they will have to fight right here. If Cosmolite's aim is to test him, then he intends to test Cosmolite in return. A true hero would never endanger innocent bystanders. The remark catches Cosmolite off guard and piques his interest. As a sworn protector of the people, he cannot tolerate civilian casualties, so large-scale magic is off the table. With a flick of his fingers, he dismisses the elemental spirits and produces his sword, but even a single swing could be hazardous in the crowd. Takahashi sheathes his own blade as well, quietly noting that the change of rules improves his odds. He equips a sturdy shield from his inventory. Cosmolite remarks that he has dealt with many opponents who hide behind civilians. Experience from his previous life has prepared him for this tactic. He sends out a cluster of needle-thin homing spells that chase Takahashi through the bystanders. Takahashi darts between the civilians, parrying the spells when he cannot dodge. Each impact ricochets off his shield into nearby buildings, cracking brick and glass but sparing the people he vowed to protect. Cosmolite grumbles that Takahashi is behaving like the monsters that pass themselves off as humans, creatures he once fought, such as the crawlers that tried to turn entire cities into crematoriums. Placing a hand on the pavement, he conjures fresh destructive magic and remarks that abominations like those became increasingly common near the end. The ground erupts, hurling chunks of stone straight at Takahashi, who bolts into motion. Takahashi explains that he spent most of his former life holed up in dungeons. The surface, to him, was simply a place to gather food and supplies. He bounds from car roofs to awnings, forcing Cosmolite to track a constantly moving target. Because he lived underground, he says he never gave those surface horrors much thought. Cosmolite finds that unfortunate. He had hoped they might swap memories as fellow regressors. Takahashi replies that his first life feels like another world entirely, so there is little to discuss. Cosmolite retorts that this should make the present blue sky even more precious. Their duel spills into cramped alleyways. explodes. Takahashi ducks behind dumpsters and raises his shield, yet Cosmolite's magic still slams him against a brick wall. Takahashi mutters that tight spaces suit him better, but the hero scoffs, claiming he has no use for a coward. Unable to change his nature, Takahashi adapts instead. He pulls a lightweight hover skateboard from his inventory to boost his mobility. Cosmolite wonders whether Takahashi is merely trying to escape, tired of the fight already. He warns that he demanded proof of possibility and has little patience for opponents who only know how to run. Cosmolite unleashes a vast wave of magic that fills the street, forcing Takahashi to retreat step by step. Judging from everything Takahashi has shown so far, Cosmolite concludes the fight is essentially over and prepares to finish him. Takahashi's eyes dart to a nearby utility pole, the opening he has been waiting for. He pivots and drives a powerful kick into the pole's base. Cosmolite momentarily freezes, unable to grasp the tactic, as the metal column cracks and topples. Takahashi smirks, ready to turn the fallen pole and the chaos it creates into the counterattack he needs. The pole starts to topple, and Cosmolite can't believe what he's seeing. He figures out why Takahashi did it, though. If he ignores the pole, it'll crush a car and injure civilians. Reluctantly, he cuts it in half, exactly what Takahashi expected from a hero who'd never abandoned bystanders. The move rattles Cosmolite, but Takahashi's already shifting gears, eager to see how long the hero can keep everyone safe. Live wires whip loose and sparks jump everywhere, blowing a transformer and turning the street into an instant firestorm. Cosmolite calls up Undine for a flood of water, yet the flames keep racing across the wreckage. Takahashi points out that the deluge still isn't enough. The blast was simply too big. With everyone frozen in place, the bystanders can't even run until danger smacks them in the face. Cosmolite feels like the whole scene is some twisted joke. He summons Sylph and Gnome, then dives in himself, spirits hauling civilians to safety while he races to put out hotspots. That's when Takahashi strolls from cover and reminds the overworked hero that he's still here, hoping Cosmolite hasn't forgotten him. But Cosmolite is worried that his hands are full right now, and he doesn't believe that Takahashi would have any attacks that would work on him. But Takahashi then starts by activating something which makes the shield glow. As he says that he might not be able to damage Cosmolite, but at the very least, he can certainly disturb him as he pushes the shield right towards the back of Cosmolite. Cosmolite realizes something. The way he is falling towards the sewers underneath here, and the last thing he had hoped for in this battle was to get really, really dirty like an insect. But Takahashi is gloating as he says, the feelings of a weakling being forced to drink muddy water. He hopes that Cosmolite will love experiencing it just once. As Takashi slashes his sword, Cosmolite goes down, falling and falling right into the mud water. The mud goes splashing all around. I think some even got to his mouth. I hope he likes the taste, because for now, Cosmolite is really, really frustrated. But then, Takashi says that he still has plenty of that in store for Cosmolite as he brings out his wand. But Takashi has just had enough. He raises his hands and says that he surrenders. He is at a loss. He just cannot take it anymore. Any more of these muddy situations. Then they go to a safer place and talk about how Cosmolite certainly is really unlucky. He gets into accidents pretty often, and he also realized that Takahashi even used Cosmolite's own attacks and redirected them in order to cause the accidents. That being said, it's still strange that so many accidents happened in a row. Cosmolite realizes this could only mean that Takahashi remembered places where accidents occurred in his previous life. Even Takashi confirms that is pretty much what he did. He remembers the explosions and how it caused a lot of deaths. He wept and cried for all of them, the miserable memories of his past life. They are useful from time to time. More importantly, he hopes all of this is just enough proof that Cosmolite needed for that possibility thing he was talking about. Well, Cosmolite just laughs and even claps, saying that Takahashi has done pretty well. But now, Takahashi will have to accompany him for a little while longer. Takahashi wonders what that is all about. But then, Cosmolite starts doing some warm-up exercises with his hands, saying that the void barrier is going to disappear pretty soon, and only he can fix the damage here. So, Takahashi will inevitably have to go back to the hospital. There, he will have to take some countermeasures against the curse-born disaster. This is a new term for Takahashi. He doesn't understand what this is, but it certainly sounds a bit scary. Cosmolite is really surprised that Takahashi has no idea about the curse-born disaster, so he tries to explain. It's the tragedy that occurs in that hospital. But he also believes that since Takahashi regressed too, then he must also know about it. But Takahashi does not have any idea about it. This is strange for Cosmolite. He, in fact, thinks that Takahashi is still joking around. So now, he just laughs and says that Takahashi should really stop with the unfunny jokes. But Takahashi just keeps a straight face and once again says no, he really has no idea. Now, this is quite a shock for Cosmolite. Then he starts screaming, how could Takahashi really not know about such a huge incident, even though he knew about the fires and road cave-ins? So Takahashi just nervously laughs and reveals that it's not a surprise, considering how he was just a loser who spent most of his previous life in the dungeon after all, focused on slime for 70 years. His knowledge of his past life is certainly distorted. But then, of course, Cosmolite understands that also means countermeasures against the Curseborn disaster will be unavailable to Takahashi, since he doesn't even know about it. Cosmolite just sighs, but he just doesn't have enough time to explain it. The void barrier is almost gone, and it soon starts clearing up the sky. He then tells Takahashi that he will need to go to the morgue under the hospital. That should give him a gist of the situation. But Takashi is a bit surprised with this sudden springing up of a request like that on him. But Cosmolite says he has plans on going over there as soon as possible too. But if Takahashi doesn't do anything, there will be severe casualties. Now, after hearing this, Takahashi also believes that he must do something then. And then, Cosmolite just races towards the sky. Takahashi asks him to wait, but he doesn't. He just keeps on going ahead, and the void barrier has almost cleared up too. So, Takahashi decides to just go back to the hospital for now. With his warp bracelet, he warps, and then we see the whole area once again. Once again, the area is filled with life as people start moving, living, and leading their peaceful lives until the disaster strikes. At the hospital, the doctor is once again talking about the regularly scheduled checkups, which should be enough for the future. The mother is really thankful to the doctor as she bows. Takahashi also bows, but then he opens his eyes and looks toward the family. He doesn't have the time to explain it to the two of them. Even he is not sure what's going to happen, so he just starts leaving for now. Just knowing that the hospital is in danger is enough for him to take action. He decides he should get the two of them away from here as soon as possible. Unaware of the danger, Nozomi just talks about how, now that she has calmed down, she is feeling a bit hungry. Mother says that maybe they should get something to eat on the way home. But Takahashi says no. He will make the food and make it into a celebration of sorts. Nozomi is really surprised. Even the mother thinks it's quite unusual. But Takahashi says from time to time he will do the shopping too, so both of them can now just head home first. Mother wonders if they should really let Yukito do what he wants. But Nozomi says that if the mother is fine with it, she is also. They both are really looking forward to all of that. They wonder if it's going to be alright as they walk away from the hospital. Takahashi watches them, and once they are out, he starts heading for the morgue, which has to be off-limits to outsiders. So first, he goes to the men's restroom, where he puts on a nice hooded disguise. Maybe those villains' clothes aren't completely useless. This is the item he got from defeating K2. He was using it to stop all the small fry from paying attention to him, but he didn't think he would be using it the way criminals do. His hand was forced, but still, he is reluctant. However, a nearby guy gets really scared, wondering if he just saw a ghost as the door opened on its own for him. Then Takahashi goes into the elevator, thinking about this Curseborn disaster. He feels like he has heard about it before, or maybe not, he just cannot be sure. He did say that he would understand once he got there, but as he reaches the basement, he just keeps on walking without thinking too much because he wants to see everything for himself. But here, things are really quiet. He wonders if there is truly a disaster-level threat here. Still, he keeps his guard up, nothing wrong with that. So far, the radar shows no threat at all, so at least for now, there is nothing. Takahashi walks a bit farther and finally sees the door to the morgue. He opens it and silently steps inside. The atmosphere is bleak and even scary, and he notices a lot of bodies. What happens to one today may happen to another tomorrow, he murmurs as he moves across the room, gazing at the bodies lying there. Yet, after walking quite far, he still sees nothing unusual. Nothing is happening. He wonders if Cosmolite was just trying to mess with him. But then, suddenly, something changes. The bodies start making eerie noises and twitching in unnatural ways. The room that was lifeless moments ago is now filled with terrifying figures. They scream as they all shuffle toward Takahashi. Now he understands, it's easy enough for anyone to figure out. These are just zombies. He's grateful he sent his mother and sister away from this place.
Guys, that's the end of the video. If you like this video, please leave a comment in the comment section. Also subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon. Like the video and share it too. Thank you for watching and see you next time again.